There have been only 9 countries with nuclear weapons arsenals, at least up until now. In the very near future, that number might go up to its second digit for the first time in history. The potentially newest member of this club, Iran. The Middle Eastern country is likely about to join the nuclear arms race that started all the way back after World War II. And somewhat ironically, the U.S. and Israel, the 2 countries that probably least want Iran to possess nuclear weapons, have likely both directly and indirectly sparked the sequence of events that allowed Iran to invest in its nuclear weapons program, all under the premise of nuclear energy production. Over the course of as little as 5 years, from 2018 to 23, Iran's nuclear program evolved from mere international concern to one with the potential to significantly alter the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East and beyond. What brought about this change? What does Iran's nuclear weapons problem have to do with US involvement, both in the past, present, and possibly even the future? Is the more aggressive posturing by the US and Israel in the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict making things worse? And are we on the brink of yet another large-scale war, this time in the Middle East? Stick around to find out on today's episode of The Military Show. To understand why Iran is such a nuclear threat, it's best to start with why it previously wasn't. Technically speaking, ever since Iran underwent its revolution in 1979, its nuclear program, both in terms of weapons and energy production, has been on an off-and-on-again basis. The country's unstable economy and politics in the years following the revolution led to a massive brain drain of scientists who could forward nuclear research. But Iran's nuclear program was still able to slowly advance under the West's radar. However, that nuclear program triggered international alarm in 2002, when the National Council of Resistance of Iran, an opposition group, revealed previously undisclosed nuclear facilities at Natanz and Arak. International Atomic Energy Agency or IAEA inspections confirmed Iran had been conducting undeclared nuclear activities for nearly 2 decades, including uranium enrichment experiments and plutonium separation research. This revelation shattered trust and raised serious questions about Iran's intentions. The JCPOA, or the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, signed in 2015 after years of painstaking negotiations, represented a historic compromise between Iran and the United Nations Security Council's 5 permanent members, also known as the P5+1, and consisting of the United States, United Kingdom, France, China, Russia, and Germany. Iran agreed to limit uranium enrichment to 3.67%, reduce its stockpile by 98%, and accept rigorous international monitoring in exchange for sanctions relief. The agreement was working, according to the IAEA, which verified Iran's compliance in 15 consecutive reports in the years immediately following the agreement. However, the JCPOA would end up lasting for all of 3 years. The first Trump administration made a unilateral withdrawal from it in May 2018, despite verification of Iran's compliance. The move dealt a devastating blow to international non-proliferation efforts. The actual cause of the withdrawal wasn't that Iran was suddenly breaking the agreement, which wasn't known at the time, but that the deal came alongside significant alleviations on sanctions imposed onto the country. Instead, Trump tried to force Iran to completely end nuclear research and development, while also trying to revert the sanctions. The maximum pressure campaign that followed reimposed crippling sanctions, but failed to bring Iran back to the negotiating table for more favorable terms. Instead, Iran adopted what experts called a strategic patience approach initially, followed by gradual violations of the agreement designed to build leverage. After the US withdrawal, Iran gradually abandoned its commitments under the agreement. Since 2021, Iran has systematically restricted IAEA inspectors' access to key nuclear sites. The IAEA reported in early 2024 that monitoring equipment at facilities in Natanz and Fordow had been discontinued, creating significant knowledge gaps about Iran's nuclear activities. Back in June 2022, IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi described the situation as deeply troubling, noting that Iran was removing basically all of the agency's monitoring equipment, approximately 40% of the installed devices at the time. Furthermore, satellite imagery analyzed by non-proliferation experts also revealed continued construction at hardened nuclear sites such as Fordow. The Institute for Science and International Security noted in a March 2024 report that new tunneling activities at the Natanz facility suggest preparations for even more hardened enrichment capabilities, which would simultaneously shield them from surface-level bombardments in case the US or Israel make a more aggressive move, which we'll discuss a bit later. The depth of these facilities, estimated to be protected by up to 90 meters of mountain rock, makes them essentially impervious to conventional military strikes. Only the United States' largest bunker-buster bombs, the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, might be capable of reaching these depths, and even that remains uncertain. The administration of former President Joe Biden made attempts to revive the deal but faced significant hurdles: Iran's demand for guarantees against another American withdrawal, disagreements over sanctions relief sequencing, and Iran's insistence that the IRGC be removed from the U.S. Foreign Terrorist Organization list. By late 2022, diplomatic momentum had stalled entirely, with the October 2023 Hamas attack on Israel effectively ending near-term prospects for revival. This has all led to Iran rapidly developing its nuclear capacities, perhaps due to assistance from China, which has its own nuclear program, even if it's self-limiting due to active non-proliferation agreements. According to the Institute for Science and International Security, Iran has accumulated enough highly enriched uranium to potentially construct multiple nuclear weapons if further enriched. By early 2025, Iran had reportedly amassed approximately 182.3 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity, more than double its stockpile from mid-2024. While still short of the 90% enrichment required for weapons-grade material, the sharp increase raised serious concerns among international observers. However, nuclear enrichment follows an inverse difficulty curve. The more enriched uranium is, it's easier and faster to enrich it further. This is due to the definition of enriched uranium. You see, uranium comes in three main isotopes. Uranium-238 is the most common, composing over 99.3% of naturally mined uranium. Next is uranium-235, which constitutes roughly 0.7%. The final isotope is uranium-234, which constitutes around 0.005% of mined uranium. Both uranium-238 and uranium-234 are not fissile, which means they don't contribute to reactions that weapons and energy production require. However, uranium-235 is highly fissile, and it's the isotope most needed for weapons production. Therefore, to make useful material from mined uranium, the predominant isotope uranium-238 needs to be removed. This is achieved by systematically removing uranium-238 via gaseous diffusion or centrifuging, which separates uranium-235 and uranium-238. As such, 60% enrichment means that there's roughly 60% uranium-235 taken from all isotopes. Meanwhile, 90% enrichment means that there's only around 1 uranium-238 per 10 atoms. Due to this, if you have a stable amount of uranium-235 in a mixture, you need to keep removing less and less uranium-238 to reach higher enrichment states. And Iran has been working hard to achieve that final push. You see, out of the two enrichment options, gaseous diffusion, which is used by the US, is noted for being slower than the centrifuge option. And guess which of these Iran has been developing for decades? That's right, the better one. Iran started using centrifuges by adapting the designs made by Pakistan, which in turn were illegally acquired from the UK. Regardless, the country technically legally made the first IR-1 centrifuge, which has subsequently been improved and approved by the JCPOA. However, after the facility's fourth iteration, the JCPOA effectively ended, which also ended the oversight of these designs. The country's IR-6 and newer IR-9 centrifuges represent a quantum leap in enrichment technology. These advanced centrifuges can enrich uranium by order of magnitudes faster than the older IR-1 models limited under the JCPOA. According to technical assessments, Iran's deployment of advanced centrifuges has shortened its theoretical breakout time to weeks rather than months. The IR-9 centrifuge, tested successfully in 2023, represents a particular concern. It has an estimated enrichment capacity of approximately 50 SWU, separative work units, per year, compared to the IR-1's 1 SWU per year. Even just a few of these machines could potentially produce enough weapons-grade uranium for a bomb in mere weeks. This is bolstered by a report made by the Institute for Science and International Security. It suggested that of September 2022, the advanced centrifuges, IR-6 to IR-9, numbered about 2,780, or about 39% of the number of deployed centrifuges at Natanz and Fordow, and they outproduced the 7,110 deployed IR-1 centrifuges by up to 85%. So where does all of this research come from? Remember, the country was technically forbidden from advancing its nuclear program from 2015 to 18, and before that it was under heavy sanctions. To appease the West, Iran has also long maintained that nuclear weapons violate Islamic principles, citing a fatwa, a religious decree, by Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei prohibiting their development. This narrative formed a cornerstone of Iran's diplomatic positioning during JCPOA negotiations. However, many experts now question the sincerity of this position. Dr. Karim Sajadpour of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace noted, in a February 2024 analysis, that Iran's religious objections to nuclear weapons appear increasingly instrumental rather than fundamental. The fatwa itself has never been published in written form, and its exact terms have shifted over time. More tellingly, Iran's actions suggest that the country is prepared to develop nuclear weapons long before outlining that religious policy. Iran's nuclear advancement has triggered what some analysts call a hedging strategy among regional powers. Saudi Arabia has openly stated that it will pursue nuclear weapons if Iran obtains them. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman explicitly declared in a 2018 CBS interview, "If Iran develops a nuclear bomb, we will follow suit as soon as possible," a position Saudi officials have reaffirmed as recently as January 2024. The United Arab Emirates, while developing civilian nuclear capability, maintains the infrastructure that could potentially be repurposed if regional security dynamics deteriorate further. Its Baraka nuclear power plant, while currently under IAEA safeguards, has an enrichment capacity that could be redirected into manufacturing fissile material for weapons. Israel, widely believed to possess undeclared nuclear weapons, has also adjusted its military doctrine in response to Iran's progress. The introduction of a new fleet of F-35I Adir stealth fighters, equipped for long-range missions, and the commissioning of 3 new Dolphin-class submarines capable of carrying nuclear missiles suggest preparations for potential deterrence or preemptive scenarios. Despite facing some of the most comprehensive sanctions in modern history, Iran has managed to maintain and even expand its nuclear infrastructure. The Institute for Science and International Security estimates that Iran annually allocates between $1.5 and $2 billion to its nuclear program, demonstrating a national prioritization of nuclear capability even amid economic hardship. Iran's economy has developed significant sanctions resistance through what economists call adaptation mechanisms, including barter arrangements, cryptocurrency transactions, and third-party intermediaries. Oil exports, while reduced from pre-sanction levels, rebounded to approximately 1.2 million barrels per day by late 2023, primarily through sales to China at discounted rates. This revenue stream, combined with the prioritization of nuclear development in national budgeting, has ensured continued funding despite broader economic challenges. But having enriched uranium and a bomb doesn't equate to having a nuclear missile, and that's another department in which Iran has made steady progress, despite sanctions from the West. The successful test of the Khyber-Shakhan missile in 2023, with a claimed range of around 900 miles, demonstrated that the country has ballistic missiles that could, theoretically, carry nuclear warheads. More concerning is the development of the Fatah-1 hypersonic ballistic missile, unveiled in June 2023, with reported speeds of Mach 13 or even Mach 15, and advanced maneuvering capabilities specifically designed to defeat missile defense systems. While these claims remain unverified by independent experts, even more modest capabilities, such as speeds around Mach 5 to 10, would represent a significant advancement in delivery technology. Considering the distance between Iran and Israel, or lack thereof, Israel's Iron Dome defensive system would have minutes at most to detect and react to a launch of a Fatah-1 coming its way. This, coupled with the missile's advanced guidance that allows it to course-correct, could constitute a severe threat to Israel's very existence. So Iran might have the capability to enrich uranium and put it on a missile. But how soon can it use both of these to actually develop and test a nuclear weapon that's ready for deployment? This is the concept of breakout time, and Iran's has changed dramatically since 2018. Initially, the JCPOA had extended this timeline to approximately 1 year. However, the Institute for Science and International Security suggested all the way back in 2023 that Iran could produce enough weapons-grade uranium for a nuclear weapon in about 1 week using advanced centrifuges at Fordow. The subsequent weaponization process, transforming this material into an actual nuclear device, would likely require an additional several months, according to U.S. intelligence assessments, though some experts believe Iran may have already completed key weaponization preparations. What would remain then is bomb testing, which would be difficult to hide on a larger scale and would immediately draw attention from the West. Iran is trying to achieve that level of subterfuge by pointing the lens to its West. The October 7, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel and the subsequent Israeli military response in Gaza marked a critical inflection point in regional dynamics. While Iran denied direct involvement in planning the Hamas attack, it quickly framed the conflict within its axis of resistance narrative. The loose alliance of Iran-backed groups including Hezbollah in Lebanon, various militias in Syria and Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, and Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei publicly praised the attack, calling it a success and an irreparable intelligence defeat for Israel. More significantly, Iran coordinated its proxy network to continuously pressure Israel. Hezbollah began launching rockets into northern Israel, Iraqi militias targeted US bases, and the Houthis disrupted global shipping through the Red Sea with drone and missile attacks on commercial vessels. The multi-front pressure campaign revealed a new level of operational sophistication in Iran's proxy network, raising concerns about how these same capabilities might be leveraged in a future nuclear crisis. At the same time, the international response to the Israel-Hamas conflict has made Israel the target of scrutiny rather than Iran, which played directly to Iran's advantage. The long-standing shadow war between Iran and Israel escalated dramatically in April 2024 when Iran launched a direct attack against Israel, firing approximately 300 drones and missiles in retaliation for an Israeli strike on an Iranian diplomatic compound in Damascus. While Israel's air defenses, supported by the US, intercepted most projectiles, the attack marked the first direct military action by Iran from Iranian territory against Israel. Israel's response came 2 weeks later with precision strikes against Iranian air defense systems and missile production facilities. Though deliberately calibrated to avoid escalation toward all-out war, these exchanges crossed a threshold in the Iran-Israel conflict. All of these effectively pulled the US into the conflict as well. Ever since the US pulled out of the JCPOA, it's tried different strategies for controlling Iran's geopolitical output in the region. In particular, the Biden administration's attempts to restore American leadership faced significant challenges, including domestic political polarization and declining involvement in Middle East entanglements following the Afghanistan withdrawal. The administration's initial diplomatic outreach to Iran stalled by late 2022 as the focus shifted to sanctions enforcement and military deterrence following the October 2023 Hamas attack and subsequent regional escalation. This was emphasized by periodic US attacks on Iranian proxies, while Iran itself remained out of reach of US military operations. President Donald Trump's return to office in January 2025 marked another shift, with the administration signaling a transactional approach to international relations that prioritizes direct American interests over broader multilateral frameworks. To put it more bluntly, Trump was tired of the US appearing weak to its allies, namely Israel, and pressured by Iranian proxies. Therefore, he started one of the most devastating offensive campaigns on the Houthis, one of the proxies, in mid-March. Trump's approach has raised concerns among European allies about coordination on Iran policy. French President Emmanuel Macron warned in February 2025 that fragmented Western policy creates openings for nuclear brinkmanship. While the three administrations had different approaches, all of them ultimately distanced the US from the intensive diplomatic efforts that characterized the original JCPOA negotiations. This trend has left both Iran and its adversaries free to develop independent strategies rather than coordinating within a US-led framework. At the same time, the US might be powerless to stop Iran from developing its nuclear program further. Both Israel and the US openly stated that Iran is a potential threat. Furthermore, Israel has taken a more aggressive, preemptive approach to curbing nuclear weapons development in its vicinity. Back in 1981, the country bombed Iraq's nuclear reactor because, they claimed, Iraq's potential ability to finish one and start enriching uranium would have been too late and would be a threat to the entire region. In more recent history, Israel also launched a large preemptive strike on Hezbollah's arsenal and rocket launchers to prevent a massive strike on Israel. Both use the same strategy of preempting enemy military actions, but the same won't apply to Iran. If Iran has already developed its nuclear weapons program to the point where it would take weeks to finish a bomb, Israel's current military capabilities won't penetrate the hardened underground bunkers at Natanz. Only the US will be able to do that with its bunker buster missiles. However, a US attack on Iran would directly prove to the axis of resistance that the West sees them as a legitimate threat, which would only escalate the conflict in the region. Therefore, any attack by the US or Israel needs to essentially be an open declaration of war, one which would remove Iran's ability to prioritize research instead of defending itself. That same attack would not only degrade America's geopolitical standing globally, but would go directly against the administration's ongoing efforts to bolster its internal and regional security. A wide-scale attack on Iran would require a coordinated effort and incredible amounts of dedicated resources, which would put a strain on the country's economy, which is also starting to be affected by Trump's insistence on waging trade wars with long-standing US economic partners. At the same time, Iran would counter with its own ballistic missiles, likely targeting Israel, which would spread the war outside of its borders. Also, Iran could inflict severe economic damage to the US and the West by cutting off access to the Strait of Hormuz, which is vital for the international oil trade, as it's used by Saudi Arabia, one of the largest exporters of crude oil. This possibility has significantly altered the strategic landscape. For one, Saudi Arabia has emerged as a potential diplomatic intermediary. As one of the leaders of the Islamic world, the country is uniquely positioned to create religious and geopolitical pressures on Iran. At the same time, its dependence on trade means that worsening the conflict in the Middle East would directly affect its economic prospects. This resulted in Saudi Arabia reopening diplomatic dialogue with Iran in 2023 after a 7-year pause. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has privately expressed to Western diplomats his belief that Saudi Arabia can serve as an honest broker due to its unique position, aligned with Western security interests while maintaining cultural and religious connections to Iran. In June 2023, Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan visited Tehran for the first time in 8 years, reportedly carrying messages from Western powers regarding nuclear negotiations. However, Saudi Arabia's potential as an intermediary faces significant limitations. The kingdom remains deeply concerned about Iran's regional ambitions and nuclear program. A senior Saudi official, speaking on condition of anonymity to the Financial Times in March 2024, characterized the relationship as pragmatic engagement rather than true reconciliation. The Saudi-Iran dialogue appears focused primarily on de-escalation rather than resolving fundamental disagreements. This is backed by previous statements that the country would develop its own weapons if Iran does, which would only worsen the problem and develop a miniature Cold War state in the Middle East. What happens next may reshape global security architecture for decades to come. The developments in Iran's nuclear program represent one of the most significant non-proliferation challenges of our time. As the clock continues to tick, the window for preventative action, whether diplomatic, economic, or military, grows increasingly narrow, and it's looking more likely that neither of the three options would have the effect the West, or possibly the entire world, is looking for. But what do you think? Will the West manage to pacify Iran peacefully and avoid a potential nuclear war? Let us know in the comments below, and thank you, as always, for watching.